All right, so that you're aware, uh, each class, I'm going to record my lecture and demonstration, and that will be available on Google Classroom. My main reason for that is in case anyone is quarantining. Oftentimes, someone may be in quarantine, and we don't know until a day or two later, or maybe even just later on that afternoon. So right now there was one student who had to leave to go get a mask, but there's one student who's just not here. Now, I don't know if that's because they slept in or if because they're quarantining, right? So I make sure to record at least the lecture and the demonstration from class. I'll never record you guys. Don't worry about that. And it gets posted to Google Classroom so that anybody who missed because of quarantining can see that. However, I don't discriminate. It's there. So if you yourself just feel like you need a review, feel free to watch the video. Or if you were absent for a different reason, hey, make sure you grab one of each of those, and thank you. If you're missing for some other reason, right? If you're absent for whatever reason that might be, you can still watch that video too. I'm not going to be like, no, that's only for the quarantined students. What we're going to do today is go through the syllabus. You have a copy in front of you. I've got it also up on the screen, so if you don't want to have to stare at the piece of paper in front of you, you can look up here. I need to make sure I'm actually recording. Yep, all right. I'm not going to read through every word of this. I don't feel like that's necessary. But we'll hit some important points that I want to get to. And I'm going to give you guys time for any questions you may have. All right, so first off, this is Art 111. We'll meet in this room every day from 9:30 to 10:45 a.m. As I just mentioned, I'm your instructor, Professor Jason Cole. These are my office hours. My office is in this building, in room 113. It's on the other side of this building, down that hallway on that side. Once you pass the bathrooms on your right, my office is the first one there. I have a tendency to put whatever work I may be working on. Surprisingly, the art professor is also an artist. So I have a tendency to put my work that I may be currently doing on the wall outside my office. And right now it's a set of portraits that I've been doing of students wearing their masks. So if you see a bunch of paintings of people with their masks on, that's my office. You know that you're in the right place. These are my office hours. That's when you're guaranteed to find me, but I'm often in my office more than what's listed there. Those are just my official office hours. This semester, I'll be having because the past couple semesters, I was only doing virtual office hours. So if you needed to have a meeting during office hours, we would set up something through Zoom or something like that. This semester, I'll have office hours in my office, but I'm only going to have my door cracked open a little bit so that I can have my mask off while I'm working in my office. If you come by, just knock on the door to be sure that I'm in there. I'll put on my mask out of respect for you, and we can have our meeting in the office. Below that is my office phone number and my email. I don't know why I clicked on that. Hang on. Go away. The best way to get in contact with me outside of classroom time is my email. If you call my office phone, when I'm in my office and my phone rings and I look at it and I don't recognize a name that's on that thing, I don't answer that phone. I get too many robocalls to my office. I get too many calls from textbook publishers that want me to try the latest thing. It gets annoying. So I will let things go to voicemail if I don't recognize the number. So the best and quickest way to get in touch with me is my email, which is listed there for you. All right. Now, in every class, you're getting this COVID-19 notice, so I'm not going to sit here and read through all that. You're going to get this enough times over this week. I think you understand by now that the pandemic hasn't gone away yet. We're still dealing with it. And if you find yourself having to quarantine, get in touch with your professors. Things of that nature is what this says, right? So, I will quickly read the course description because there's a couple things in here that I want to bring your attention to. So, Introduction to Drawing is an introduction class which will expose the student to a number of traditional skills and ideas that have occupied artists throughout history. The class involves drawing from direct observation. That is the focus of this class. Learning how to draw what we see, with an emphasis on accuracy of representation, space, volume, linear and freehand perspective. And if you don't know what any of that is, don't worry. That's what we talk about in the class. And other basic techniques and concepts. This should say Introduction to Drawing. Basic drawing is what this class was called in another school that I taught at, and I keep forgetting to change that. So in Introduction to Drawing, there's an emphasis on line as the principal purveyor of form. This class, we're going to deal almost extensively with exclusively, with line. Not a whole lot of what you might think of as shading in this class. That kind of stuff we would dive into in drawing too. We'll get into a little bit of that toward the end of the semester, but most of the semester is going to be taking lines on a piece of paper and creating the illusion that that's not just a bunch of lines on a piece of paper, but that it's actually objects with form and volume, and that if you could reach into that sheet of paper. That's what we're going for with this. A sense of three-dimensional space, but we're only using line. All right, so I'm not going to sit here and dive into all of the course goals and course objectives. I will hit up the units of study real quickly. When it says here, familiarization with tools and materials, that's what we're going to do in class on Thursday. Then we have a unit of linear perspective. If you don't know what linear perspective is, no worries. We'll talk about that much more in depth when we get there. If I could sort of sum it all up in a quick sentence, it is a technique that was developed back in the Italian Renaissance for creating the illusion of three-dimensional space using a very regimented set of rules on the page. And by sticking to those, you can have a very convincing illusion of three-dimensional space. Then we'll get into a little bit of planar analysis. If you don't know what that is, no worries. We'll talk about it when we get there. Then these two units we'll be using a ruler for the most part. So then we're going to get into some freehand techniques. This is what this loose to tight and unfinished to finished is talking about. And at the very end of the semester, we'll get into a limited amount of value. Value in this case doesn't mean like, I don't know, how much your drawing should cost. Value means dark and light. So this would be sort of along the lines of what you might consider shading. Right? There's no textbook for the class. There are some materials, and we'll get into those in a moment. Let's talk about the course requirements real quick. Here we're kind of getting into the stuff that most students want to know about, like what is expected of me in the class. First off, a personal sketchbook/journal is an important requirement of the course. It's a depository for ideas, visual observation, and written responses to anything in class or outside. Include research of artists and special interests, techniques, subjects, methods, media process, master studies, reproductions, etc. Don't worry if you don't know what any of that means, because on Thursday, that second packet that you have, I want you to bring it back with you on Thursday. We'll go through this and we'll talk about what's expected in the sketchbook. All right? So when I pause to ask if you have any questions, if your questions are about the sketchbook, wait until Thursday and we'll talk about that. All right. Sketchbooks get graded at midterm and finals. The class will be done while there's a weekly in-class assignment and a related homework assignment. So the way this class will normally go each day is you'll come in here, you'll get your stuff set up. Over here is the area where we'll work from observation. Don't worry, you won't be drawing from that yet. That's left over from the end of last semester. So by the end of the semester, yeah, you'll be drawing stuff like that. But at first, everything's going to be a whole lot simpler than that. No worries. But we'll be surrounding some sort of still life here in the middle. You'll set your stuff up. I will talk about a new skill or skill set or concept and demonstrate it to you on that easel that you see over there by the door. Then you'll come over here, you'll practice that particular skill on Tuesday and Thursday. And then on Thursday, there'll be a homework assignment I give you that's related to what you just learned that's then due when you come back to class on Tuesday. So doing those assignments in class and those homework assignments over the weekend are required. And then a final portfolio in which you'll put all the work that you've done in the course is due at finals. All right? Questions about any of what I've just talked about before I move on? Okay. All right, so my attendance policy. I'm not going to dive into everything here. What I want you to know is 7 absences it says online or in person, just in case we do switch to online. 7 absences is the automatic fail point. The class only meets twice a week, so that's 3.5 weeks of class. The exceptions, so excused absences, are if you're absent because of an approved scheduled university extracurricular activity, meaning your coach or whomever has emailed me and I know about it. That's an excused absence. Quarantine absences, where I've also been notified, those are excused. When it comes to medical absences, other than quarantining, that we can discuss on an individual basis. If you're like, man, I woke up this morning and my head was spinning and my throat was sore. Well, letting me know about that might be something that I decide to excuse. But if it keeps happening, then maybe I start thinking that you're pulling my leg and maybe I don't need to excuse these absences anymore. All right? 3 late arrivals to class. Don't worry, today doesn't count. 3 times arriving late to class, I count as an absence. I don't count the first day. People show up late on the first day because they're trying to figure out where this room is, so no worries there. Then I transported a little bit of the COVID-19 post from earlier down here that just essentially says, hey, if you have to quarantine, please contact me and let me know. This little portion down here essentially just says, if you also, during this semester, have somebody who has to quarantine that then you are in the position of having to take care of, because that happens way more than you might think, where a student finds themselves having to look after another person who's quarantining or who might even be sick. If that's the case, let me know so that I understand why you're missing class and so we can work out alternatives for you as well. All right? It's worded poorly. I should have worded it better because it sounds like I'm saying, hey, if you have to take care of somebody, you better let me know. But that's not the case. It's genuinely my concern. I want to know this so that we can work with you. Okay. Now, before I get into the methods of assessment and evaluation and grading, I want to say one quick thing. And I always hesitate when I have to have this conversation right at the beginning of class, right at the beginning of the semester, rather, because I worry that what I'm about to say makes me come off like a complete and utter asshole. But I assure you, this is because I'm going to say what I'm about to say because of semesters of students being miserable in the class for the reasons that I'm about to talk about. Okay? I don't want anybody to be unhappy about being in this class. A trend that I have noticed my entire time that I've been teaching at Bethel is that oftentimes students will be in the class because either a coach or a registrar, not registrar, what am I saying? An advisor, rather, has said, hey, you need a course to build your GPA. You need an easy A class. Hey, let's just stick you in this drawing class, right? And that's not your fault, right? You have been led to believe by someone, a coach, an advisor, or whomever, that this is an easy A course. If you just show up and like breathe the air in the room, you're going to get an A. I don't know why that even after all these years, that's still what some people want to tell students about this class, but it's not the case. Now, certainly, this is a class that as long as you're coming in, you're putting forth the effort, you're genuinely working hard. When you find yourself struggling with something, you're either asking for help or really pushing yourself to figure out how to do that thing that you're struggling with. You can certainly pass this class. You can even excel in this class. Really and truly, those who end up failing the class are those who are just not doing homework. As we'll talk about in a second, the homework is like the hugest part of the grade. And so I have had way too many times over the past few years that there would be 2-3 students in the class who are just absolutely miserable because the class isn't what it was sold to them to be. Right? So this is the part I always worry about. It's going to make me sound like an asshole, but I promise it's coming from a place of actual concern. If you are here because a coach or an advisor or somebody else said, hey, we need to build up your GPA, let's get you into an easy class, here, take this drawing class, you're in the wrong place. Right? And that's not your fault. And if you need to drop the class, withdraw from the class, what have you, find a different class, you're not going to offend me. Right? I would rather you be in a class that you're going to enjoy than be in a class that was something different than what the person told you it was going to be. All right? That's not to say that this class is designed to be difficult, but it's not that easy A class that for some reason, year after year, people keep trying to claim it. That's what it is. But if you're interested in what, and this is, I say to the person who is a complete and utter beginner who has never touched pencil to paper to try to draw anything, all the way up to the person who feels pretty confident in their drawing abilities. If you're interested in a course that by the end of the semester, after you've put in the genuine effort and work and the sort of consistency of effort that takes, to see at the end of it surprising results that will even surprise you, like, I didn't know I could do that, then you are in the right place. Right? And welcome. Glad to have you. But again, if you're in here because you were told what I said before, then you're in the wrong place. And I would much rather you have a conversation with your advisor to get you where you need to be rather than to be miserable in here. Okay? Again, I hope that doesn't make me come across as an asshole. I'm not trying to give you all the boot. I just don't want anybody to not be happy with their decision. Okay? Especially if that decision was actually made by someone else, which is what happens way too often. Okay, so all that said, the methods of assessment. All right, you're going to have homework assignments that are due at a specific date and time. Not turning in an assignment on time gets it penalized by 1 full letter grade. I do letter grades in here. A, B, C, D, F, with pluses and minuses to modulate in between. Because I've never figured out how to give a drawing or a painting like an 87. Right? So I do A's and B's, C's, so on. And so if you turn in an assignment late, let's say that assignment would have been B level, it's now a C. I knock it down a letter grade because it was turned in late. Homework assignments. that are submitted on time and graded and are given back to you can be reworked for a better grade if you would like. So if you turn in a homework assignment, you get it back and you feel like you could do better than the grade that's on it, there'll always be comments that I have written about why you earned that grade on that drawing. If you feel like you could do better, then rework it, turn it in for the chance for a better grade. It says here that in-class drawings can't be reworked, but that's because the things that you do in class are meant to be practice and practice alone. So if you're screwing up on the stuff that you're doing in class, that's okay because you're learning, right? Then, how do we define something that's late? And what can happen if assignments are constantly late? So I consider a homework assignment late if it has not been submitted by the beginning of class on the scheduled date. I've had students walk in and be like, oh shit, there was a homework assignment due today, and try to scribble something out really quickly and hand it in at the end of class. That's still considered late. If you turn it in on late, like I said, it'll be penalized 1 full letter grade with some exceptions that are mentioned up above. If you turn in something late, it cannot be resubmitted for the possibility of a better grade. So turning work in on time is important. Then, if a late homework assignment has still not been turned in within 2 weeks of the scheduled due date, the 0 remains. So I hate having to be that strict about it, but I've had way too many semesters where students took advantage of that and was trying to turn in a bunch of stuff at the end of the semester. And then if you fail to turn in 4 homework assignments within that 2-week period, that's also an automatic fail for the class as well. All right? Then sketchbooks will be graded at midterm and finals. We'll talk much more about sketchbooks on Thursday. Here's how the grade breaks down. The homework assignments are 60% of your grade. So that's a huge, giant chunk. So if anybody fails this class, it's because they're not turning in homework. Don't put yourself in that position. That leaves only 40% of the grade that you could even have counting. That sketchbook is 15%. And then how you perform in the classroom is 25%. Now, I don't mean, are your drawings in the classroom perfect? Are you doing a bang-up job of getting it? All right, if that were the case, that would be a rather high mark to have to set everybody at. Instead, in the classroom, what I'm looking for is, are you trying? Are you putting genuine effort into figuring out the things that we've been talking about in the class? Are you asking questions when you're confused about something? If I'm trying to give some advice, are you listening? Or are you instead just sort of sitting like a lump on a log, not even touching the paper until I happen to come by, and then you pretend like you've been drawing the whole time, and you watch until I'm gone, and then you just sort of sit there like a lump on a log again? Or are you constantly texting instead of working on the drawing? Or are you constantly talking to someone else and ignoring your drawing? Those are the kind of things that can affect your grade as far as classroom performance goes. All right. I know that was a ton of information. Do you have questions about any of that before we move on? All right. I know this first week of syllabus stuff is so boring. I get it. Stick with me just a little longer. We're almost, I swear we're almost done here. All right, so here on the next page, as I mentioned, I do letter grades, and then each letter grade has a definition. So what I always say to students is when you get an assignment back, as I said, there'll be a grade on it, there'll be some comments written as to why you earned that grade. Compare your grade with the definition here. And if you don't agree, come talk to me. If you don't agree that what you have done meets the definition, you think it should exceed the definition, talk to me and we can discuss that. I've also got the definitions of final letter grades here. Look at the letter that you would like to aim for in this class, and whatever the definition of that is, aim for that. All right, my requirements when it comes to COVID. It's school policy at this point. Wear a mouth and nose covering when you're inside the classroom. All right, just for the consideration of your peers and myself, please do that. If you show up without one, you're going to be asked to leave the classroom. Again, this doesn't count for today, what I'm about to read. If the student can return in a timely manner, the student will be counted as tardy. I'm not counting anyone as tardy today, so no worries. Otherwise, the student will be counted as absent for the day. All right? We're going to talk about the materials much more in depth in a little bit, but keep your work in a portfolio, whether that be one that you get from the bookstore or a portfolio that you make. You need to keep your work flat for this class. One thing that students love to do, and it affects your grade because craftsmanship is a thing, is just like take their drawing and like roll it up into a ball, stick a rubber band around it, and bring it to class. So now it's all wrinkly and looks horrible. And that can ruin what might have been an otherwise pretty decent looking drawing. So keeping your work in something that can keep it flat is important. Name and date should be on the back of the drawing. All right, here where it says all of your work must be fixed. What do I mean by that? So there's this stuff. Workable fixative. I'm going to ask you to have a can of your own, but I also have an emergency stash in one of the drawers down here. This, when sprayed onto a drawing, I don't know where the top to this went. Someone has snatched the top off of it. But when sprayed onto a drawing, it fixes that material to the paper. It takes the charcoal and the graphite and makes sure that it sticks down to the paper so that if your hands rake across it, you don't smear it. It's called workable because after doing that, you can still draw on top of it. It doesn't seal the paper in such a way that you can't still put material onto the page. The next line there, though, it says, is do not spray the fixative in the classroom, to take it outside because our lungs will appreciate the consideration. That's because this stuff is pretty harsh. It smells pretty rough, and I don't want anybody to like kill brain cells with it. But also, when we're drawing in here, microscopic particles of the graphite and charcoal dust are getting into the air, and we're all breathing them in. Even with our masks, that stuff's going to get through. So then if you spray this inside and we all breathe that in, it's just fixing that stuff really nicely to the inside of our lungs. So we don't want to do that. So we take it outside and spray it so it can disperse. All right? I'll always give you time at the end of each class to go out and spray stuff down so that, you're not rushing to try to do that. All right, prohibited from the classroom. Cell phones, you can have it in your pocket, but silence it. Don't answer it. If you think that you're going to have to answer your phone for emergency reasons, just let me know beforehand. And if you do have to answer it, take it outside. Texting, any device with headphones, tobacco of any kind, or drugs or alcohol. So don't light up in class and don't come to class lit, and we're going to be okay. Internet, social networking sites, and laziness. Don't take any of that stuff into the classroom with you. All right. Again, I know that was a ton of information. Questions about any of it? Okay. So, we're going to skip over the materials for right now. Well, except I want to ask this. I'll say this rather. If you are opted in to the bookstore first day book rental thing, you're going to also get the materials for this class. And they'll be yours to keep. If you're not doing that, the materials are available at the bookstore. You can buy them out of pocket. But on Thursday, in addition to talking about the sketchbook expectations, I'm going to also talk about the materials that I want you to get I'm going to show you pictures of them so that you know what you're looking for when you go. And talk about alternative places that you could go to get it cheaper than what the bookstore might sell it for. All right? So any questions about materials, I would prefer you waited until Thursday, and we'll talk about those. Okay? So then the last thing I'll do is just kind of point out the class schedule. The remainder of the syllabus is the class schedule. The way it is done is broken down by week. And below that, it will say what you're going to be doing that week. And if there is any homework assignment, it mentions that. So you can see when we look at week 1, which is this week, and that shouldn't say the 16th, that should have said the 17th. It says introduction and the review of syllabus. That's what we've just done. Right? So Thursday, rather, we'll talk about familiarizing ourselves with the materials, and we'll talk about the sketchbook expectations. The outside assignment is something that we'll talk about at the end of class on Thursday. Right? So each week is broken down with all that information. When something that's as big as, say, the midterm sketchbook being due, that's listed in bold and underlined. Right, so this is your first place you can go if you're confused about what you should bring to class, because it even tells you what you should bring to class each day. There's also a copy of this on Google Classroom, so if you lose this one, it's there. And if any of this ever changes over the course of the semester, I'll give you an updated version of the syllabus. Yeah. All right. So on Thursday, what you need to have with you is just something you can write on and something to write in. A notebook's fine. If you don't have a sketchbook yet, that's fine. Just bring a notebook. Because I want you to take some notes over the things that we're going to talk about on Thursday. Okay? Any questions about any of that verbal diarrhea that just came out? All right, I take the silence and the shaking of heads to mean, nope, I feel fully informed and need nothing more from you, Jason. Okay, all right. Then, like I said, Thursday, come in with something to take some notes on. If you do happen to get your materials from the bookstore between now and Thursday, bring them in, because it would be great to be able to show those physically to people as well. Otherwise, you're good to go. Go away. I will see you on Thursday. Take care. Bring back I should have said that. Bring back the sketchbook expectations on Thursday, so you have that in front of you. Take care, guys.